Hey, Matthew.
Hey, Will, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing good.
Good.
Sorry, I'm a little late getting home and getting set up, but
Oh, it's all good. Take your time. Take your
yeah,
time. No rush. No rush.
sweet.
How's your how's your week going so far? Or is it off to a good start, I
It
guess?
is. Yeah, yeah. No, it's good.
Good. Good. That's cool. Now, remind me, are you on staff at a church there?
Sorry?
Are you on staff at a church?
I am, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, my wife and I visited a church Sunday that's in our neighborhood. It meets in a like a school that's literally in our neighborhood, and
Mm.
it took me back to the first church we were at that was a mobile church, and we met in a school, and just all the difficulties and fun that comes with that,
Yeah.
tearing up and tearing down, and not having volunteers, and just all those many layers of things. So it was took me back, which is funny.
Yeah, I was at a church for five years on staff that was mobile, and I don't think I could do it again.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, or actually a coworker. Well, he's a friend, but he's also a coworker. But he he's at a mobile church in like downtown Austin,
Mm.
and I was just telling him, I said there's bits of that I enjoyed, like just the community of the people that would set up and tear down, and
Mm.
that that desire of, we're all working towards, like, even just a very practical goal of, like, we have to get set up by an hour and 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I compare that to, the church I was at in Florida, and just having facilities and a space, I definitely think having the space is a better route if you can go that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The ability to have your amp set up all the time is so nice. And since we moved to Austin, we've just been attending a church, and I'm not on staff right now at a church, and so I haven't, been playing on the weekends like I was playing guitar.
Mm.
And I told my wife, like, I just think the biggest factor now keeping me from playing is just like schlepping gear. Like, I'm just so tired of hauling pedal boards and guitars
Yeah.
around. If I could leave it set, then I think I'd be okay playing somewhere again.
Yeah. Oh, totally, man.
It's no fun.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. While you're setting up, do you want to just kind of take me through where you are up to this point, any questions you had, and what you were looking to, I know we've been going on the keys route and getting everything transferred over to instrument racks and stuff, but how do you feel about everything we talked about so far?
Uh, Honestly, it's great.
Good.
In some ways, like my goal, I was hoping that this meeting would be with the gentleman who plays keys. So I think, like, moving forward, I want to do some stuff where, like, he can come in and we can work through some stuff, and he can ask you some questions. So I
Okay.
guess he does like a lot of recording with FL Studio.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, if you're familiar. Like, I always remembered it as like Fruity Loops, but like
Yeah.
I didn't think it was like a serious program. But
Yeah.
so I, but I think, like, he uses some plugins. But I think in some ways it'd be great to have him be able to have some training with Ableton, because I think it will unlock some things with him.
Okay.
But then I would say also just like customizing, like, how he would like this to be set up.
Yeah.
Which would be, awesome. I have a MIDI controller here. I'm just thinking of so wanted to walk through some like MIDI routing
Okay.
things,
Yep.
and then yeah, in some ways I'm just trying to think of, because we talked about like some pad stuff. Yeah. Another thing that might be good to do this time is also to talk about, like, how to like use some of Ableton's like effects. I feel like in some ways I'm looking for some sounds with Verb that if I could kind of like figure out how to do that with Ableton, it'd be helpful. I feel like in some ways, like some of the stuff that I've at least tried to do with some Ableton Verb, like I feel like I'm not like necessarily getting what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you have any feedback with that, would be great.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, yeah, and I think definitely as you know, the with the Keys guys, as he has availability and either wants to join us, or if there's a time where you know you want to, if it makes more sense on a certain week to meet at a different time and me just meet with him and I can record it, or if you could be there or whatever, you know, let me know kind of as his schedule. As his schedule opens up or whatever. And my hope is with that link I sent over that, you know, that you could even maybe send it to him so he could see what I have based on his availability, all that sort of stuff.
Oh, sweet.
If that helps, that's great.
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah, I think all that sounds awesome.
That'd be awesome.
That sounds good.
Cool.
Well, since you have the controller there, do you want to start kind of asking some of the MIDI routing questions you have, or you know, what you're looking to do with that, and we can see if we can dig in there.
Well, looks like I might have froze up. Oh, it seems like you're back.
Okay.
For a certain point, it froze. I got a weird message on my computer that said my internet was unstable.
Oh yeah,
which I've like never seen before. Like a Zoom thing.
Yeah, I think it's a Zoom thing. I don't know why it does that sometimes. Yeah, if it keeps chopping out, getting choppy, let me know. And I can, yeah, if we need to hang up and call back or something, I can do that. I turned the Wi-Fi off on my phone to make sure I'm sucking up bandwidth too. That's possible. But, yeah, if it keeps being choppy, let me know and I'll call back.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, do you want to start talking about some of the MIDI routing stuff you're looking to do or trying to do?
Yeah, so I think in some ways, so when we were looking at the piano rack, we have like a mute and then like the 4 different sounds. And in some ways, like some of that stuff like with like pads and strings as well. And so I feel like I'm trying to, so with this Livid controller, normally if we have like a piano fader, when we bring the piano fader down, it would mute the sound, and then we would choose what we would want to play, like with like buttons. In terms of like selecting those, because I feel for the piano especially, we'll probably just choose one sound. I feel like sometimes for the pads, we may have a couple of pads going at one time. So I think it's almost like we had talked about some different ways to route some stuff through through the instrument rack, and so I guess I was just trying to figure out how to like wrap my brain around some of that stuff.
Yeah, and you said you have the controller there with you now, the Control-R controller.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do actually, let me do this. I'm going to pull up a picture of that guy, which I know what it looks like, but just to make sure I'm seeing it. Yeah, there you go. This guy's a great controller. That is pretty cool. So let's do this kind of as a start. Let me give you the some of the building blocks of doing this, and then what I think would be cool is let's let's just start somewhere, see how that feels to you, and then we can customize from there. I think I think again it's kind of like getting the building blocks and figuring out which works best for piano versus pad versus kind of all that different stuff. Do you have the set that we've been working from pulled up on that machine?
I do, yeah.
Okay, cool. if you want to screen share, just so I can look at the set, and then let's look at a few different options, and I'll kind of remind you of those couple options we talked about up front, and then we'll get to assigning and just see what feels right.
Cool. Let's see if I have share screen. Did that work?
Looks like
You
it's
see my
Yep.
Ableton set?
Got it. That's perfect.
Oh, awesome.
That's perfect. Okay, cool. So do you want to start with looking at pianos? Do you feel like that's a good place for you?
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I think the cool thing about this is that, so I'm kind of thinking about doing this as like a, so like having some sort of live mode, with this where we can change the sounds. My keyboard player is super excited about the idea to like toggle with the arrows so that
Okay.
we could like set up like chains of sounds and just cycle through them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and in some ways it's like I feel like we have enough buttons on this controller.
Yeah.
And like fader banks that we can like do some stuff like that. So.
For sure. Well, let me. I'm gonna move in the kitchen and see if Wi-Fi gets better. Give me 1 second to plug in here.
Okay.
Sure. Let's see. I think that's better for this. All right. Cool. So, yeah, just as a kind of very quick refresher, and then I think. I think based on what you're talking about, especially the ability to toggle stuff, I think I know which direction to head. But let's just start really quickly with like a refresher of all the ways. So probably no more than 5 minutes going to go through this. So
Cool.
Obviously, the way we have it set up, each of our clips, mute, extra dark, standard, bright, hard, those all trigger chains in the instrument rack. And so we can trigger those clips individually by clicking on them. We can assign, do a direct one-to-one MIDI assignment so that you could, I wish someone would make a MIDI controller that'd be really easy to have like a LCD screen in each button or whatever so you could see it like the perfect controller. But you could set it up to where, when you press this button, it pulled up this specific preset. Like that's definitely possible. The way to do that would be go into MIDI and MIDI assign this button on the controller to that specific clip, right? So that mute clip is assigned to this. We could do that. Mm-hmm. And that's good. That works for us. That's kind of step one. The other thing we could do is we could assign the chain selector to a macro, and then assign that macro to a toggle or a endless encoder on our controller so that you could slide through those with a toggle. I don't, that's not my preferred method, but the cool thing is it lets you really quickly get from, that's probably a good method if you have like 84 presets, right? So you can really quickly scroll. Yeah. For what you're doing, I don't know that it makes most sense. But the other one, and this is where it takes a little bit to understand, but if you get this, it might be the thing to unlocking, the ability to kind of do whatever for your keys guy. So let's see if I can try this guy real quick. Make sure it works. All right, awesome. So let's just really quickly do the first thing, and then we'll get into the next piece of this. So I'm just going to click MIDI, if it will let me. There we go. Okay, so everything purple obviously can be assigned. So let's take this first clip here, this mute clip, and just pick any like button on your controller, and let's just hit that and assign that guy.
Okay. Sweet.
Okay, cool. And then let's just do like two more. So if there's a button near there or kind of an order that makes sense, left or right. And then do one more. Okay. So again, obviously this is the one-to-one. So you press the button you assign for mute, it mutes it. You press the button you assign to one, and it's going to select preset 1, select preset 2. So that's probably the easiest, most straightforward thing to do. And if you only had, honestly, if you put everything in one instrument rack and you had like 10 presets, that's probably the best way to do it. As we start to spread out between, different pad sounds, different string sounds, I might suggest the way we're going to look at here in a second. But
yeah, sorry, Will, if I could just jump in for a thing. So like I had on, actually I can pull it up and show you. So I had this like assigned before, like these are all toggles.
okay,
so it's kind of like on and off.
Yeah,
which is like, and I think we were doing that because of how I was latching them before. It's like I wanted to press the button one time to like turn, like a device on and then turn it off.
Yeah.
But it seems like with these MIDI clips, like if we were doing it in clip view, could they just be like notes instead? Like instead of having to be toggled on and off? Because I feel like with this, like if I want to mute it, I have to hit like the button once.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe not. Yeah, it's almost like it. So if I'm going to 2, so like if I go to mute, like I have to like hit the button sometimes twice to get it to fire.
Yeah.
And so I'm almost wondering if I should just change that like to in the MIDI controller to like a note instead of a toggle.
Yeah, that's what. Well, so there's 2 options, 2 ways we can think about this. If you, I think because of the way we're doing this now, I would probably change the controller to send notes as opposed to toggle. Okay. If you leave it on toggle, and I don't know the control R well enough to know if you can do this, but if you're able to go in and define like, okay, on the button press, like send this MIDI note, but on the press off, then send this other one. What you could possibly do, and I haven't fully thought through the implications of this, so I probably wouldn't do it, but you could maybe set it to where each one of those sends the same MIDI note that mute is assigned to, the mute clip rather is assigned to, so that you could say like, and the interesting thing about the way we're doing mute here, it's not like it mutes immediately. So it's not the track activator. It's like I'm holding it out, I hit mute, and then when I let go, it's going to slowly kill all that. But what you could do, just for instance, like, let's say we have pad 1, 2, 3, and then when I press pad 1, it sends C#3 or whatever. When I let go, it sends D1. Well, when I press the other one, it sends C#4, and when I let go, it sends D1, which would trigger the mute clip. That if you could do that, that might be something worth investigating just to get that same experience. So if you did that, it'd have to stay toggle, have to stay the same MIDI note. Again, I haven't fully thought through that, and I feel like you could maybe get yourself in a pretty scary situation doing that.
All right.
So what I would, the easiest, most straightforward, and maybe just for now, start changing the controller to send MIDI notes so that you start there as like a simple place. And then as you're going through it, maybe one day you investigate the toggle thing if you can do that and just see. But I think doing notes is probably going to be the safest thing.
Okay.
And let me just look. So we've got piano, we've got pads. How many other? We'll have strings too. How many other like groups of sounds do you think you'll end up having ultimately?
So like piano, strings, pads. I mean, maybe like some arpeggio and lead stuff, but like, or like arpeggio / like rhythmic pulses and whatnot.
Well, let me. I'm looking at the controller now, trying to think how I would logically lay it out. But let's do this. Let me take you through the next piece, and then we'll come back and see. We'll just kind of throw some ideas, bounce some ideas around, and see where we end up as a good place. So right now it's 1-to-1. You said it exactly right. I'll probably switch it to notes so it's not toggles. But the other thing we could do here, let me just stop. Oh, that was
sorry. I was just trying to get to my note mode.
Oh, That was funny. It's just, yeah, it's like squishes the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Okay, so let me stop this guy real quick. There we go. So we have 1-to-1, which we talked about. If we hit MIDI again, this is where it gets us into it's kind of hard to explain until you just really start doing it. But here's the building blocks to make this happen. So we have this scene up and scene down, and then we have scene launch. So those 3 buttons allow us to, without touching the computer, go from scene 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, go back up, go down. And then when we press scene launch, it launches that scene, which would in turn launch any clips we have in that scene. Until we get into, and we kind of talked about these are almost like individual patches or presets, and then we could take this piano patch, this pad patch, put them together to build like a preset or bank or whatever, however you want to think of it. This button, the scene launch button, becomes really useful when you've kind of predefined some presets that mix this piano sound, this pad sound, this string sound, if that makes sense. So that basically when you get on that preset, you hit it, you go, right, which is good. So that's one thing worth keeping in mind when we get to that point that's useful. Another thing before we get over to the next piece, this guy is probably useful to assign to one of your encoders, one of your knobs, because it does the same thing as up and down, but really quickly. So
okay.
What's cool is, as this set grows, if you have 81 patches, it's kind of what we talk about with chain select. You have 81 clips, you can really quickly get to the bottom of the set by turning the knob, which could be useful. But here's kind of the other piece if we pair this with what we've talked about that I think unlocks this. So scene up, scene down, but then each one of these tracks has this individual track launch button. So basically what that means, if we're on scene 3, right, and we've toggled down to scene 3 and we press this button, that's going to play whatever clip is in scene 3 in that track, right? So we think of this as the way to navigate scenes, and these buttons would be the way to trigger whatever sound we want in that scene. So what we could do potentially, and let's try this real quick. If you want to, you can either keep this mapping or wipe this out, but let's assign maybe either these 3 or just these 2, and I'll kind of let you control it here for a second.
Okay.
Assign those to like a top level, and let me actually get to where I can see the controller again, just so I get an idea what you're doing. I would assign those to like a bigger, outside of the normal section of buttons, or maybe kind of deal.
Yeah, I feel like in my idea, I was almost thinking like those could go in like the top row here.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Just so that it's like real prominent.
That's right.
Yeah,
so let's do that. Play up and then down. Yeah, and I think right where you're suggesting, that makes sense to me. Perfect. Okay. So now let's go through and say
so I'm just gonna like pull out some of these old
perfect
things because I feel like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's the easy way to get completely lost, is to start mapping, on top of stuff you've already done, because then you have no idea what you're doing and what's happening. Cool. Yeah, I think that's perfect. So now let's map. And what I would probably do is map one of the the bottom row buttons like to correspond with a volume. So let's map one, like the piano one would go here, and this is the button we're looking for. And then go to wherever your strings like volume would be and map that button underneath it.
Okay. Word. So again, we're just to make sure. So like where our piano volume would be, so we would want some like trigger piano sound. All right.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is like, okay, this is where I use for volume for piano, and then this button directly under it would be the one that says, like, play this piano sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Is there any way that we could like tie it into to an actual fader? So like if it was on like 1 to 127, it would trigger that button, and if it was on 0, it wouldn't? Or is that not?
Yeah. So we can do what you're basically hoping when it's on 0, it mutes it, right? That's what you're after.
Yes, but
Yes.
but I might be thinking about that wrong. Because I'm almost like wondering if what I'm thinking about like makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's 2 ways to do it. One, I would assign the button that, says like, choose this piano sound. And then what you would do, I would keep the fader. Well, again, we can do whatever. I think it's just going to take some experimenting to figure out what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I would do initially, let's take that fader and assign the fader to the piano volume. And what we can do is we can make it to where when you pull the piano volume down, there's 2 ways we could do it. We can make it to where just by default, when you pull the piano volume down, it turns off the entire piano rack, similar to what you were doing before.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the easy, cheap way to do it. And I'd say let's start there. The other thing we could do, which this would involve like editing the actual control art, is get it to where at 0, it would basically trigger that mute clip, which again, I don't know that I would do that because that it just seems like different things to me. It feels
for sure.
So let's do this first. I'll pick whatever button you want to be that, like, this is my button. I say play this piano sound. Let's assign that and assign our others, and then we'll look at doing the fader thing for piano volume.
Okay. Yeah, how would I do? Yeah, I probably would. Sorry. So when it comes to, so the goal right now is that like wherever I would have these faders, like close to that, I want to put a button for like triggering the piano sounds, right?
Yeah. Let me. Give me 1 second. Let me try sharing my screen. Can I do that while you're doing it? Hold on. Stop remote support. Okay, there we go. So give me 1 second. Let me see if this makes sense to you. Okay, so can you see this guy?
Yeah.
So here's what I'm thinking. And again, we'll start somewhere and kind of go from there. And I'll try my fancy annotation mode. So I'm thinking each one of these guys is a volume, right? Piano, blah, blah, blah. And then what I would say is, let's say like this button is the sound that pulls up piano presets.
Yeah.
This one pulls up this preset. This one pulls up this one. This one.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I think if we start there, this is going to be the best place. It's going to be a little weird for a second, so I want you to make the assignment and then just try it and see how it makes sense. Because it's a different way of thinking than just like, here's this sound, here's that sound. And we may end up, the other way looking at this is we might end up saying this group of sounds calls up piano presets. This one calls up pads. That may be a better way, honestly, as I'm looking at it. So on and so forth. But let's start this way, and then we'll look at the other way too.
Okay, cool.
Get all those.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, cool. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen one more time. Excuse me.
All right. Cool.
Perfect.
Okay. So, do I want to, there you go.
Click that
this button is here. Oh, yeah. This is conflicting with my previous mappings. So I'm just going to like replace these mappings.
Perfect.
Just get rid of them for right now.
Cool.
So this guy is there. And then strings is here. And pads is here. And that's really all we have so far.
Cool.
Those three.
So before we start using it and trying it, let's go ahead and let's assign that volume that you're on right there. Let's assign that for our piano fader. Perfect. Yeah, and then strings and then pads. And then just to get it working a lot like it used to be for you, let's go back to click back on, or actually we don't need to click on the fader. Let me just drive for 1 second here. Oh, I'm not remembering.
Sure.
Click on the, all right, hold on, let's make it a little faster. Okay, cool. So now on this guy, okay, so let's move the fader for the piano rack.
Okay.
Right.
And then do I want to do that like 1 to 127?
So what I would do I think it's 1 and 0. I think is
okay. Yeah. Sorry.
It almost feels backwards to me. I can never.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I still to this day don't understand why this works, but it works. So good hack. Okay, and then let's do string. Actually, I'll let you do it since you know what's going on. But same thing for string.
Yeah. So I don't think we have anything assigned for strings yet.
Okay.
But like we have one for pads.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Cool. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, cool. So let's get out of mini-map mode, and then let's try just on piano rack, or since we're on pads, since it's highlighted, let's just bring the piano or the pads fader down, and let's make sure that turns off the instrument rack. Yeah, perfect. Okay, and then up. Yeah, cool. And then just as a reminder, and I'm sure you did this before, I would set the max of the fader so you either don't go beyond 0 or whatever you normally make the max. You might use all of the headroom.
Yeah. No, I find that's usually a problem, but sometimes it seems like I've noticed that like some of our piano patches like might be like strong compared to some of the pads. So like I feel like sometimes I can balance out, but I do think it's a good place to keep it at 0.
Yeah, I think that's a good safe place to start. And yeah, if you figure out generally something is louder, you can make its max -2 or something, just as a general way to compensate if needed. Okay, so with this setup, I want you to try it for a second. So I'm going to try to, if you remember, we have our scene up, down, and then for each our piano and pads, we have triggers. So I'm going to tell you to do something, and I want you to try to do it with just the controller and see if your brain like understands this and gets this. So everything is muted now, which is good. So that's what we want. Volumes are down, which like does the master mute. But then we also have the mute chain selected, so that's good. Let's trigger, let's leave pads where it is, but let's trigger piano sound 3. So try that with the controller and see.
I deleted the piano sound 3, so I'm just gonna have to like remap those real quick.
Okay, cool.
So I'll just figure out where.
Oh yeah, so leave those unmapped. Sorry, I misunderstood you for a second. So you remember the scene up and down buttons you mapped?
Yeah.
Okay, so so use those plus. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
And then trigger.
That's right. So it's a little weird, and again, it takes like a different way of thinking. But you want to do piano sound 3. Now you want to do pad sound 1. So you
And then I would go and then pads. Oh wait, sorry, strings.
Yep, there you go. So
I mean, in some ways, to be honest, man, like if you didn't have a ton of sounds, that's almost easier.
Yeah.
Because you could just like move up and down real quick. I mean, I think it's a pain with these toggled buttons, which I changed it all in the Livid programming. They're normally notes.
Yes.
Which I think notes would be way easier to work with this.
Yeah, and I think if you, or I guess even more importantly than you get it, if your piano player can understand, and again, it's a different way of thinking, but if they can basically understand, and it's almost like if you're playing and you keep your right hand, ready to go at any point to just toggle down and then select, toggle down and select. And what's cool about this, so let's just do, and I think I'm still controlling. So let's say I'm going to click here, and my internet is slow tonight. Okay, so I'm going to do Command-I, which is adding a new scene. And I'm going to rename it, and let's just call this like Song 1. And we'll say these are our sounds for Song 1, right? And song 1, we're going to use the piano preset for. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it here.
Oh, word. Oh, that's wicked cool.
Right. And then we're going to use pad sound 3. So you leave all your initial presets where they are.
Yeah,
You build
yeah.
your songs. So then now what's cool is instead of this almost like, I have this way to navigate and choose specific ones, but you could still do scene up, scene down. And then now that scene launch button that we did. So let's do that. So do scene. You're actually kind of on it now, but maybe do scene up and then scene back down. Okay, perfect. And then now hit, you got it.
Oh man, he's going to love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And it's great how you can just copy it because then he can just choose things. And
that's right. And again, the cool thing is with this setup, it takes a little bit initially, but I think ultimately where, when you think of the set, most of the times when you do, it doesn't matter what type of music you're doing. Most of the time when you do this song or this type of set or whatever, you're using, you're using the same types of sounds every time.
Yeah.
And let me show you one other thing while we're here that will, if you like that, then you're definitely going to like this one. So let me duplicate this and let's call this song 1 chorus. So I'll just put song 1 C for now. And let's say in this case, when we get to the chorus, this changes from sound 3 to 1 on the pads, right? So what's cool about this, go ahead and hit scene launch on it for the button you have there. And then if you notice, once we launch that scene, we automatically select the next scene. So the next step for him is just the press of a button, or where it gets really cool, if he has a foot controller, the click of a button.
Nice.
Yeah, so you could literally have one, he just thinks you build your presets and you just have it like next, right? And I'm just going through all those. And for me, that's where it gets really cool and can become, it's almost contradictory. It feels like we do all this work that feels not like, how a piano player would think or a keyboard would work. But doing this initial work and then getting to these presets, I think makes it really easy in the end. It's one.
Oh my God. Right? Yeah. To me, it's awesome. I just think it's intuitive because I think sometimes like I'll see him firing around for different buttons and setting up songs.
Yeah.
But if he could just do it ahead of time, I mean, it feels like you could build a set if you had all your sounds in 10 minutes.
Yeah. And
it's wicked quick.
Yeah. And the cool thing is you could keep, and what I would do is I would start as if, okay, this set we're working from is like your giant preset bank. And then based on what songs you're doing that night, you could go in and say, let's pretend this is song 2. Okay. Now song 2 is song 1. And I still have the same presets, but the order's changed.
Yeah.
What a lot of people do is, well, you can do it however. You can either keep like your main presets at the top, but your songs at the bottom. So you could put songs at the top, presets at the bottom. But yeah, what's cool then is you have access to everything and that ability to pull up a specific sound. You can go anywhere at any time, or you can be as planned and thought out as you want to be at the same time, which is cool.
Yeah.
So again, I think that's, in from my perspective, I think that's the best way to do it. It gives you tons of flexibility. But the other possible way that, just as a reminder that may be worth thinking of, and it would limit you to, like we looked at it, limit you to about 8 presets each, including the mute preset. So about 7 presets plus a mute preset would be those individual blocks would be assigned to each clip. Now, the cool thing about this, though, is as long as, I guess we would eat up. So you could do both, basically. You could say, here's piano presets, here's pads, or strings, pads. As long as your play for each individual sound type was not under the fader, if that makes sense. Like if it's in that middle bank, you could say middle bank is like my navigation. These little groups down here are my preset groups, right? And what's cool is you could then do both. So he could really quickly at a glance just decide as he's playing anything, go, I want this piano sound, boom. And I've got that clip.
Yeah.
Which is neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is just knowing those, it's going to take a little bit of just doing it and trying it to figure out what feels right. You kind of have the pieces now, you have the building blocks and the pieces to kind of make it work however you want to.
Yeah.
And that's where I would just start. I would live with it and see kind of what ends up happening. And then from there we can, the possibilities are endless kind of moving forward once you get that down.
Awesome.
Cool. Does that all make sense? Any questions about that?
No, I mean, it's great. And I think, I feel like I'm like starting to see new possibilities, which is like really great. And I think a super time saver for him.
That's awesome. That's good. Yeah. I think, to me, whenever keyboard players switch over to Ableton, if they've spent some time learning this sort of stuff, it's just like a whole brand new world, and it's like such a freeing experience. Like I feel like that's what everyone kind of says. It just feels freeing as opposed to being stuck in this like certain way of having to do it. Cool. Well, let's if you're cool with this, let's talk about the reverb stuff real quick.
That'd be awesome.
And let me share. Stop this. Let me share my screen and pull up live. Going on? Okay, opening live and share my screen. Oop. All right, share computer sound, desktop. Okay, cool. Can you see Ableton?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So let's just start. And what's interesting is you're talking about that. I can't off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what every single knob in the reverb does, but I know enough that I feel like, and I know the things to turn off when I need to turn them off, those sorts of things, that I feel like I can get it, from like a room reverb for a guitar to like a just massive kind of, like I think of reverb as I think Ian maybe said this, but I think of reverb is a tool for emulating a room, and then reverb is a tool for like making soundscapes. I think Live's verb is really good kind of at both of those.
Cool.
Actually, let me pull up this sound because it's got some MIDI to it, and I just did this the other day. Okay. Let me put a piano preset on here. I think that'd be a good place to start. Let's do this guy. All right. And then I'm going to take the reverb off of this guy so I'm not being influenced. All right. Can you hear that?
I can't.
Okay. Oh, it helps when I select the right thing. Actually, it's funny that a pad, MIDI for a pad sounds amazing, but MIDI, the same notes being played on a piano sounds awful. Okay, so let's just start kind of, here's the dry sound. Okay, which is supposed to be a pad part again, which is why it's so choppy. I'm just going to drop the verb on. So for me, I'll take you through the first couple settings I adjust, and I typically am using reverb from a effect standpoint. Like I want it to be heard. I want it to sound like a soundscape kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I always, and this is probably just habit more so than anything, I don't know that I could tell a difference, but I always change the quality from eco to high.
Okay.
That's where I start. Again, in a shootout, I promise you I probably cannot tell the difference, but I've convinced myself I can. So I change it to high. Right. And then dry wet for me, and this is obvious, and you're a guitar player primarily, right? Yeah. So we get dry wet, but I obviously, for me, when it's an effect, or especially for pads, when I want the reverb to be a part of the pad sound, it's all the way wet, and then bring it back. And then decay, for me, when I want something to sound like a reverb, especially for pad stuff, when I just change the quality to high, I bring the dry wet all the way up, and I bring the decay up. That's but just that already sounds way better to me. A couple things to be aware of before we dig into like shaping it. The spin sometimes can sound a little metallic-y or a little like cheap, if you will. Mm-hmm. So you can do two things. One, you can just bring it down a little or completely turn it off. So let me play it for a second and mess with it so you can hear the difference. Yeah. Excuse me. And it's kind of trying to make that like wobbly sound, of like a delay echo unit. So I typically leave it lower than how it starts, or I turn it off. One random side note, in Live 10, the new Echo device sounds amazing. There's a reverb built into it that I feel like, even though it's, and I need to ask them for sure. I don't know if it's the same exact reverb as this one, but it just sounds different to me. It's really interesting.
Cool.
So that's kind of cool. And then chorus, again, I normally leave it on, but if I have a chorus somewhere else in the chain, I'll typically turn it off. But that's just a... Which again, you may want, you may not want. This is where it starts to get interesting to me. So obviously, decay time down, dry wet all the way up. You start to get, you can almost start to get some roomy sounds. And then what's really interesting, so stereo and then size, I mess with a lot.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so when I was doing, and I may have it saved in here somewhere, I basically made like a guitar chain to mess with. And when I wanted just like a room reverb, just to make it feel alive, kind of bringing stereo down to where it's not so massive, and then bringing the size down and decay low, just kind of thicken it up and made it feel like a room as opposed to reverb and effect, if you will.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me just fiddle with that for a second. All right, so again, that gives you, and I can, that just kind of thickens it up a little bit. Stereo, yeah, and it's saying determines the width of the stereo image. So again, if you want this really wide, big sounding reverb, it's kind of like crank this up, crank size up. But for me, sometimes, right, and you kind of hear the reflections start to shoot off there at the end, which is cool. Diffuse is kind of neat, and reflect. And that's, to me, especially as you hear, yeah, there we go, it starts to get really loud. Those to me are like bigness shaping, if you will, and it's has a lot to do with kind of how the reverb diffuses in the room. And I think somewhere in here they talk about, probably this guy, it's basically like, the tail that follows the early reflection. So it's like kind of bouncing around in the room. What's cool and what might help doing that too is you can adjust like the highs and the lows of that. So if you feel like the reverb tends to be, or based on the effect you're doing, it needs to be a little brighter, or it's too bright, you can adjust that here, which is kind of cool. Scale, coarseness of the diffusion, higher values tend to produce a darker sound. Density, networks, lower values produce thinner sounding echoes, higher values produce denser ones. So, I rarely mess with this. I rarely mess with diffusion. I just kind of leave it as is. Reflections, again, you might want to turn off or adjust there. And then pre-delay, when I want like crazy, like that wobbly thing, I'll mess with that, but typically I don't. So input processing, you can filter, cut highs, cut lows, that sort of deal, which a lot of times Live's effects, they have filter built in, chorus built in, or you can use the chorus. So if you're filtering already, you can turn that off and just leave it kind of as is, and not mess with that. So I think I just always leave it on the default, but I just even read that it will save CPU by turning it off. So I probably should turn it off. But yeah, so in short, for me, the stuff I typically mess with, if I wanted a big kind of pad, I'll increase the decay time to like 4 seconds. Dry wet, if it's if I want the reverb to completely shape the sound, it goes all the way up. Quality high. Chorus, if I need to thicken it up, I'll increase chorus and then sometimes bring that amount up. I'm typically, though, using the chorus effect just out of preference, so I see it as like a separate thing, thinking as guitar pedals. We love individual effects more than we love like multi-effect stuff. So I'll take chorus off of here and use that. And that's kind of where I start as a massive reverb, kind of ambient sound reverb thing. And then again, when you want the room thing, bringing the stereo down to where it's not so wide, and then definitely bringing size down really helps with that. And then, adjusting dry wet. And again, the one thing I'll again, as a reminder, turning spin off sometimes, let's see if I can get it. Let's get kind of back to where I would do like a really ambient thing. You can hear the sometimes just doing that helps clean it up. And I've heard people say that is the thing that they don't like sometimes about Live's reverb that feels cheap to them. If that makes sense. So does that make sense? Everything we talked about?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. It's very helpful.
And what I would say as far as, and I'm actually just thinking through this subject as a possible blog article, but just for me, learning the reverb, you learn the different bits and the pieces. So I think the next step is literally put it side by side by whatever reverb you want to recreate, and then A and B and A B then back and forth, and then adjust where you feel like you're getting pretty close. And sometimes what I found a lot of times, if it's a vintage reverb, that just means they dirty up the signal a bit. It's warmer. They have some sort of chorus or detuning thing, and because it's vintage, we like that, and we don't put the vintage reverb on something to be like a room style reverb, right?
Yeah.
Live's reverb is just Live's reverb, so it's kind of like that's where I think people sometimes get lost. The other thing I was going to mention too is just a good starting place is the presets. And do you don't have Ableton Suite, do you? You have standard?
I don't, but we had talked the last time about like the benefits of having Suite.
Yeah, and if you get Suite, one of the cool things, and I don't know, I haven't saw here, the convolution reverb in Max for Live is unbelievably cool. And you can load your own convolution presets in if you have them, and there's just tons and tons of tons of presets and tons of IR recordings. So anything, any type of IR reverb, like I know Logic, I forgot what it's called now. Logic has an IR reverb. Lots of stuff has that. You can drag those in and use a convolution reverb. A buddy of mine, and I forgot how you do it now, but a buddy of mine used, I'll have to ask him how I do that. He basically sampled his Blue Sky and made an IR recording of his Blue Sky, and then dragged it into the convolution reverb as a way to do that, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that could be a possible solution as well too.
Okay.
Interesting. I just found a Max for Live device called Apple Remote. It apparently lets you control Ableton with the Apple.
Oh wow,
that is fascinating. I had no idea that existed, but there you go.
Nice.
Therein lies why Ableton made Max for Live, is for some guy somewhere to make that. So, which is cool. Yeah, so that's kind of the reverb in a nutshell. But yeah, what I was going to say is just A/B those. compare them, and then even use some of the presets. The thing I always love doing that's really helped me from a sound design perspective and learning sound design is going in and finding a preset I like, and then just the reverse engineering part of it. Like, what's the difference between this dark medium room and this one? And then I know what to go in and change. Cool. All right, let's get rid of those guys. Awesome. All right. And then let me pull up my notes here. Here, that's not working. Awesome. So we talked about the MIDI routing stuff, the controllers, and the reverb stuff. Yeah, we got and one question I had from what you were saying earlier, when you were talking about him using, and it's funny, I'll forever call it Fruity Loops. It's hard for me to call it FL Studio, but I imagine excuse me, the plugins he's using are native FL Studio plugins. Is that kind of his like rub?
Yeah. So he definitely has some plugins that he digs.
Okay.
But yeah, I think in some ways, like he knows how to get around FL Studio. And so I think in some ways, Ableton, I would think understanding how to use Ableton would be great.
Cool.
For him. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say too is, there are, if he, getting into just learning live, we can definitely talk through that. And I think get him going really quickly to where he at least feels comfortable. And I love when the light bulb goes off for people. And when you get to that moment, then you're like, okay, I can survive. I can do this. But I think we could definitely get into that point. But even if he gets to a point where he's interested in, sound design in live, even beyond using Omnisphere and the plugins you're using now, if it's like, I just want to create a great pad sound in live, how do I do that? Where do I go? What instruments? And especially if you upgrade to Suite, having access to operator and analog and wavetable and tin, I think is going to be incredibly valuable. And I think he probably would like that a lot.
No, I mean, honestly, he would love it. And I feel like that's where I'm excited to have him spend time with you, is to, eventually just delve into some of the other opportunities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So
buy the presets to realize that you can do a lot of stuff in live.
Yeah, for sure.
You did the plugins to, but it's live.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think there's some people that just hate on presets completely, but I think it's a beneficial thing. But with learning a few things and understanding the tools, I think you can make almost any sound you want to, pretty easily. All right, cool. Well, is there anything else you can think of just while we're on this call that you wanted to hit?
No, I mean, this is great.
Cool.
I feel like this is going to take a lot of the stuff that we're doing, just really make some things easy. So I feel like there's just a lot of things that we do in our service that is like pretty much the same every week. And so I think being able to have some presets and, in order this stuff feels like it's going to be great.
Yeah. And the cool thing, again, I would take this, I'd mess with it. And we didn't even get to the okay, I press play and it automatically changes my presets, which obviously requires playing to click, probably playing to tracks, but there's still even space to go and places to go beyond this, which is cool. So, I'd say just keep messing with the controller. And as you have questions, write those down. If it's like, we want to do this or we love this, but can we do this? And I guarantee there's probably a way to do that. So
awesome,
cool.
That's great.
Well, good stuff, Matthew. And let me know. Do you want to set up a time for next week, either with you or with him, or you want to wait till his availability?
Yeah, I probably should just chat with him to see, when, because I think he travels and tours with a group, and so he's away this weekend.
Okay.
I think we fly back Monday, but it depends on what time.
Cool.
But if not, it'd be great just to get him, on some of these calls, and then I'll just set some stuff up with you guys so
Cool.
that you can be, separately. And I think the two of us together, but then separate so he can ask some questions and dive into some stuff.
Cool. Well, that sounds good. Well, that, as you're looking at stuff for him, that link, I think it's just willdoggett.com/training has that schedule there. And that hopefully should make it a little easier, but yeah. Anyway, that was great. And I'll send you the Square Cash thing. That's awesome. Working great for me. Super easy, but great. Yeah, it was great chatting yet again. And we'll chat here soon.
Thanks, man. Sounds good.
All right.
Touch.
All right. Bye. Okay.